Hello and welcome to First Flight, a Star Trek Enterprise rewatch podcast where we are watching and discussing Enterprise in succession. First Flight is a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions Network.
This is Commander Tucker of Enterprise. We've got some information you're going to want to hear.
Welcome, Enterprise fans. We are your co-hosts, Abby and Chris.
Carrots!
Today, we are discussing Bounty, the 25th episode of Season 2. Bounty had a teleplay by Hans Tobiasen, Mike Sussman, and Phyllis Strong, and a story by Rick Berman and Brennan Braga. It was directed by the one and only Roxanne Dawson.
Yes!
And it aired for the first time on May 14th, 2003. But before we begin any discussion, we, as always, need to issue a read alert.
Tactical alert. All hands to stations.
There are potential spoilers ahead, and we might end up talking about any part of the series at any time, so you have been warned. All right, I don't envy this, but now for a summary of the episode, it's time for the Captain's Log and Chris's Haiku. Okay, Chris, let's go.
Captain Starlog Supplemental.
All right, here we go. The haiku for the artful episode, Bounty. John connects to live. Poor cover of Blood Fever. Judgment connections.
Not bad.
It is a poor cover of Blood Fever, which is ironic because Roxanne Dawson is directing.
Yeah. Well, and I have to just point out to people who cannot see how you have written this that you have appropriately used quotes around the titles of the episodes inside the poem. So I appreciate that as the grammar nerd I am.
Yes, and I believe in poetry that has lines that end with punctuation.
Nice.
Yes. It's a visual, structural element that I enjoy. Anyway, moving on.
All right. So after that little word nerdery there, it's time to deploy our subspace amplifiers and get into the episode. We'll start with a quick chat about the cold open and then head into our pros and decons section. Each of us will share some of our favorite parts of the episode, and then if there are things that don't gel with us, especially lots of gel, we will have a discussion on any decons from the episode and any gel. You might hear a dog bark in this discussion if somebody's Porthos Pick is mentioned, but we'll still circle back and discuss them all later on.
All right, let's get into this episode. As always, we start with the cold open. So, Abby, what are your thoughts about this episode's beginning?
All right, so I love this cold open. It's so much fun, and it's such a switch in the middle, or I guess at the 3/4 of the way through. But it's just fun, and it wasn't at all what you were expecting this to become. And I remember when this episode originally came out, I thought, wait a minute, did I watch the wrong trailer last week? I thought this was supposed to be. And like it's going on, and there's all the banter between Trip and Archer about did you get dizzy? No, you weigh more than me, and all that. And then, my ex-girlfriend could argue with the Tellarite. Like, you're really seeing them as friends. And it's such a fun beginning. And then they're talking about all these places to see on the planet and steam pools and baths and all this. And it just is so happy and light. And you're like, oh, it's going to be one of these. Nope. We're going to shoot Archer, kidnap him, and away we go. And that's the way to hook somebody, because it was unexpected and it was fun, and we had good character building moments, and we get to see really cool Tellarite makeup. So what's not to love about this cold open? What do you think?
Well said. Yeah, I had 4 notes. Tellarites. Planetary Survey, another episode in this string where they're starting with science.
Yep.
Right, and exploration, but also some shore leave. Right, we always hear about characters having shore leave, and we never really get a good one. There's always something going on. And then I love those away mission clothing. I love that Enterprise, and this is your department, right? But I love that Enterprise has different clothing for the away mission. much like in the cage. I just love
Yep.
those jackets in the cage, and we have jackets here, not in this episode, but Enterprise has those alternative uniforms for the away missions. I think it's so logical that they have that. I really wish later series did that as well. But yeah, good stuff. And everything else you said, the trip comment about his girlfriend, like that made me laugh out loud because I hadn't seen this one in years, so it was kind of fresh. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then the twist. So yeah.
Yeah, the twist.
An excellent beginning to this episode.
For sure.
All right, so we got that out of the way. Let's talk about a few more good things because we really like that beginning. What is your first pro?
Okay, so my first pro, and this was surprising to me because I watched it, and what really jumped out at me is something that I didn't expect from this episode is how many little fabulous moments of Malcolm Reed there are in here. Yeah, I mean, this is not a Malcolm episode,
No.
but when you think about it, we see him in command, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And then we see him as a tactical officer doing his job really well. He gets to blow something up, and the way he says, with pleasure, when he blows up the false signal, that is a perfect encapsulation of Malcolm Reed right there.
The little, the slight smirk, right?
Yes, exactly, because he's just into it. The fact that he is so good and calm with T'Pol, who we know as an audience, he's had a little bit of a thing for, and oh my God, I wish that she had called him Stinky in this. Like, I would have laughed so hard if we had that callback, but I mean, obviously that wouldn't have happened. But I love how professional he is, how calm he is, and he has this huge, like, eye roll sigh after he shoots her, which is so perfectly in character for Malcolm. And then he gets to use the grapplers to save the day. So when you look through all of that, there is some awesome Malcolm stuff sprinkled all the way through this episode. And, we're getting to the point where Malcolm starts to fall off in a lot of character development. And I really enjoyed the fact that he had all these moments in all these different capacities to show how good he is, not only at his job, but with the crew now. And that's 2 seasons of character development right now. I mean, he is very different than he was and very different than he will be. And it was like a snapshot in time of hyper competent Malcolm. So I really liked it.
And he wasn't icky.
Yes, exactly.
Now, everything you said this is a great pick because all of these moments could be completely forgotten and overlooked. Right.
Yep.
And I did find myself enjoying every time he was on screen this time, but it didn't occur to me to make him a pick. He wasn't really the central feature, but I love this. Yes.
Well, for 2 seasons now, I've been preaching Malcolm Reed is good at his job. Malcolm Reed is good at his job. And, here we see it again. And in so many different ways. That's why it had to be a pick of mine, because it was just the variety of Malcolm being competent was beautiful.
Well, and we got Malcolm in the spacesuits.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool too. Yeah.
I know that they were hell on the actors because they were so heavy, but they're so beautiful. Like, that is one of it's definitely in my top 10 of all Star Trek costumes of all time are those EV suits. They're so good. All right, so that was how I wanted to start us off with something a little bit more obscure. What's your first pro bringing us to tonight, Chris?
Mine is that this is a follow-up to Judgment.
Yeah.
Right? This is the strength of Enterprise, that this serialization, it is really kind of getting stronger as we're going, especially as we're getting to the super serialized season, but it's a light serialization that I really appreciate. It makes everything feel like it matters because you never know when a plot point is going to come back. And luckily they're pulling from a plot point that is a pretty much universally beloved episode, Judgment. So I just loved that connection, that that story continues, and there are consequences for his escape from prison. That
Mm-hmm.
he has this bounty on on him, and it's likely doubled now. And I honestly don't remember if that comes back anymore. So I look forward to finding out.
Well, I won't ruin the surprise for you
Well,
either
thank you.
way.
Thank you.
But yeah, this is something I kept thinking about too, that I love when Enterprise refers back to itself. And we've said that a couple times this season, where you can see these connections and you can see the impact of previous things. And this one is so big and in your face that
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, remember that whole trial and prison thing? Whoops. And there's been little things before. They've talked about, Archer gets a reputation after he frees Suliban prisoners
Yeah.
or some of that. But this one is so direct and so nice. And it also made me think back, especially when at the end he's dealing with the Klingons on their ship, and
Mm-hmm.
he understands them being kind of bullies and bounty hunters, because that connects back to Marauders too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he learned about Klingons who might not be the most honorable, and when he sees them screwing Sklar out of some of his payment, he knows who he's dealing with, because he has
Mm-hmm.
already. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really nice to see all of that come around again. And it is cool because you can watch it without knowing, and they do enough plot exposition that you can figure it out. But if you do know, it's that much better. And that is a really cool part of this episode.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about it, but that definitely ups the quality of this episode for me. So,
I agree.
all right, your next pro.
All right. So my next pro is going back to our Tellarite friends here. We have Sklar and his brother, and when he goes to get his injector, when they're bickering, and bickering might not be the right word, when they're having their so perfectly siblings who don't agree with life choices of the others argument.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so real. And we were talking about back on Horizon when we had Travis and his brother arguing, and it didn't feel sometimes like it had that rawness. This one does. Like, they're laying it out for each other, and you're watching Sklar get his heart broken by somebody who cares about him. And poor Archer, like, just being there, and what, like, his mind must have been going 500 miles an hour once he's figuring all this out.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this interaction between the brothers, because in the end, he gets his injector, he gets the help, but he also gets a hard dose of reality from someone who he believes and somebody who he respects. So it's definitely got that gut punch that some of the other sibling conversations we've seen this season don't. And I really liked that and wanted to call that out. Plus, those two Tellarites and the emoting that they did through all that makeup deserves a call out, because that's part of what made it real. And doing that kind of emotional work through that much prosthetic is difficult. So props to them.
I love that scene too. And yeah, that dynamic between them, so much more real than Travis's brother and their kind of disagreement. And it makes me think, does it go back to Rick Berman's rule about the human actors not emoting a lot, but the people in prosthetics being able to go over the top or go further? And I don't feel like these were over the top. I just felt it was very real and raw and authentic.
Yep.
So yeah, and I enjoyed that storyline between those two characters as it slowly developed throughout the episode. Great pick.
Why, thank you. All right, so I'm sure you have a great pick for us as well. What is your second pro?
It's a tiny one. It's just this moment of music. And it's when T'Pol is breaking out of the decon chamber and she's knocked Phlox out. She's ripping that panel off, and there's just this amazing strings and percussion. It's a very minimalist moment, but the strings were really rich, a great chord playing there. And I just stopped it, rewound it just to listen to that again. Let's listen to it right now.
Phlox to the bridge.
Tucker here.
You may want to evacuate D-deck.
So that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just loved that little moment. There was a lot of decent music in this one. It didn't catch my ears throughout the entire episode, but that was a moment that really stood out to me that I just wanted to call out on.
Well, and I think part of it too is that that's where you would know there'd be a commercial cut. And that percussion, those kind of synthetic bongo drum sounding things,
Mm-hmm.
really put you into that. What's going to happen next? Oh, commercial. And even though I know I don't watch with commercials anymore, you still
Mm-hmm.
get those cuts where they would be, and you have that little break in there where it's just kind of like you're still holding your breath because something is definitely going on here, and that music really helps to enhance that moment. So nice call on that one.
I think another reason that it stood out is we don't often get such minimalist scoring where there's just like one or two voices. That's it.
Yeah.
So that was unique and I liked it. So let's go to your final pro.
All right. So my last one is kind of more of a whole scene. Like I really enjoyed the escape that Archer does from, the lockpick with his teeth to, making his handcuffs into like a Thor type weapon, like a big old hammer he can just swing around, to he does the most amazing like dive roll shoot in the
Yes.
hallway. And you're just like, dang, Archer. Then I'm sure that was his stunt double, but it was amazing. It was one of those moves that definitely looked like movie stunt quality right there. And the Klingons that come after him in this one, like you don't ever get to see them being still, but they have disco Klingon costumes. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, they're wearing like the sparkly silver sleeves and the undershirts and all this. And it reminded me of like, and again, I'm thinking back, if the really formal, like, Klingons, the high council Klingons from Judgment and the budget Klingons from Marauders came together, they would have these disco Klingons and they would dress like this and they would have some aspects of both of those. And I just really enjoyed how those little bits, and Archer having had all this Klingon experience and then using it here and seeing these Klingons who fall somewhere in between those two extremes on the spectrum, we have such an interesting glimpse into Klingon culture in this season that I think gets discounted when you think about like Klingon culture episodes in general across the franchise. Like Enterprise isn't super Klingon heavy, but these episodes in this season really deserve a second look because there's a lot that goes on in them, especially with the earlier Klingons that we're seeing in these Enterprise episodes. And I love it. It was a fun escape.
It really was. And we get a different Klingon ship here too. Very different.
Yes.
Right. Not even the hint of the bird of prey.
Yes. The lighting was awesome. It looked rusty.
Yes. And when you were describing that roll and the firefight through the corridor, it made me think of, I think, the beginning of Lethe, when Ash and Lorca are going through the holodeck firefight the Klingons, and they were kind of rolling around, kind of just like Archer was. That was a connection that I made. It's not intentional, of course, between the shows, but I recently watched that. So this is also my exact pick as well for this round.
Oh, yay!
Except I have another layer to it. So I loved the interior firefight in the hallway with Archer with that awesome roll, and then he shoots back like he's really, really good marksman there. And fighting with his cuffs. Cool. The design of the corridors, like you said, I love the shapes of the corridors. It felt Klingon, but like, again, not quite up to standard Klingons, right? Discount Klingons again, but not quite. Like, just a little. They have a little bit more money.
It's the difference between like the Walmart Klingons and the Target Klingons, right?
Sure. Or or like Dollar General is Marauders, Walmart are these guys, right? And
fair.
And I shop at both of those places, so it's not like, those are bad. But you know. But the other part of my pick is pairing that interior fight with the exterior starship battle.
Yeah.
when the Enterprise comes up and you see the ventral side and it's firing phasers on this ship, and it's just like this hero moment for the ship itself. It's a special kind of hero moment that really, really is unique. We don't get that kind of shot from that ship often from the underside. So I really liked all of that starship action, leading to, of course, the grappler when it clings on to that, when it Klingons. That was intent. That was not intentional. When it attaches to the escape pod, and like the rope goes slack for a second, then comes taut. I love that little detail, and I love as they're
Yep.
going away, it like gets pulled in. All those little details. That's Enterprise. I love it. So that's my last pick.
All right. Well, before we move on to anything else, I have two tiny little things I want to throw in here that don't fit anywhere else. So before we get to decons, just two little asides here is number one, another connection I wanted to point out was this is what the fifth, sixth, eighth, 10th time in these seasons that we have seen Archer being an incredible pilot. Like it keeps coming back to how what a great pilot he is, and I think that piece of continuity is super cool. So I wanted to just point that out. And I would like to say that before everything else happens with the T'Pol and Phlox plot, which we obviously have not touched much on yet,
No.
I would like to go on the 3-day shore leave with them. It sounds like they had an incredibly interesting and fun time, and I would watch that. Like T'Pol and Phlox go on scientific shore leave. So
Yeah.
that's the plot I wanted with them in this episode.
Well, and that's like Tuvok and Seven going to study
Yes.
some kind of nebula, and they're just gonna be silent the whole time in
Exactly.
a shuttle and love it. I would just watch that.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and what was your first thing you just said?
The piloting.
The piloting. Yes. As I was watching
Yeah.
this, it made me go back to Canamar. And like
Yes.
Archer is captured again. Sweet talks his
Yep.
way into being a pilot. And that,
Yep.
know, it's just kind of a similar situation, but it's good he has that skill of both playing people and then also piloting. Like he can talk and he can walk the walk. So
That's why he's the captain.
that's why he's the captain.
So, on those positive notes, let's move on to some gel, shall we? Because I have to say, this is the last time we see Decon gel on screen in the entire series, and we see an awful lot of it. So,
yeah, we do.
We hear it referred to, but we don't see it rubbed on again after this one, and I think we can probably guess why. So,
well, they used all their gel budget in this episode. They don't have any more left for the whole series.
So much glitter. So much glitter. Like, oh, as someone who has young kids and who works in elementary school, glitter, tiny little bit, and it's in your eyebrows for like 6 weeks, and it's everywhere. I cannot even imagine those poor people. I hope they like wrap them in saran wrap to get them to whatever shower they went in after. All right. So on that sparkly note, we've got some decons. So Chris, start us off tonight.
I'm hungry. I wasn't referring to food. Oh my gosh.
However, the quinoa salad she did get looked really good. Like that was a good quinoa salad. But
sure.
Anyways.
Yeah.
I digress.
Just all of that. I'm feeling so bad for Jolene.
I know.
And Roxanne.
Yeah.
So my next decon is it's ironic that Roxanne Dawson is directing this episode, is having to direct this episode when her character B'Elanna had a similar situation, but it was handled so much better, right? She had her shoulders are exposed, but that's pretty much it. She's all sweaty in the caves there, but it didn't feel as exploitative. There was a lot of character work. It was a really strong performance for who Tom really has become as a person.
Yes.
And we have a similar dynamic with Phlox here. Phlox is like, you're not, yourself, so he's doing the similar thing like Tom did, being a good guy, not taking an advantage of a friend or a colleague. But it just it was played up a lot more in an exploitative way that was just hard to watch.
Yes, I agree. And I feel like, I mean, everybody in Enterprise, their underwear is stupid, except Phlox. Like, I appreciate that, he got a little bit more being the denobulan male who's a little more self-conscious about stuff like that. But man, like, there's just ugh.
Yeah.
I just squick and you feel so uncomfortable. Again, this feels like something you shouldn't be watching. And she's so sweaty through all of it too. And like she does that whole like stretch over her head, and all I can think of is, oh my god, your armpits are totally pitted out from sweat. That's not appealing. I don't want your sweaty armpit like being the first thing I see. Like, no, no. Oh. And it's not just that, it's so out of character. And there's always going to be a Ponfar episode. And
Mm-hmm.
this one is just probably, and I mean, I know it's false Ponfar,
Yeah.
and kind of like when Kess went through her lojum, and like I
Ugh,
get that, and they're trying something, and they
yeah.
want, I know they want everything to be, anyways,
Intensified.
the yes,
Jolene is immaculate. Like, she's
yes,
gorgeous.
yes,
She's very attractive, but just the physical attractiveness of her body is kind of canceled out from how it's being shown and what's happening and just the dialogue. And it's just like, ugh, like you said, icky, squicky, whatever the word was. But I will
yeah,
say, and I have to credit Roxanne for this, because it probably was a directorial thing. When they're initially putting the gel on with the curtain between them, the camera is
uh-huh.
equally slowly zooming up their body parts and showing the gel sparkle on them. Both Phlox and her, they got. I didn't do the math of like the timing, but I would wager that it was equal screen time between them, and I appreciated that, even though what they were doing with Jolene, but they're like, oh, but we're gonna do the same thing for Phlox. I'm like, all right, yeah, okay,
Good.
that's fair.
Well, and exactly. It's like when, in Desert Crossing, when we've got all the shirtless men playing desert lacrosse.
Yeah.
Like Enterprise is going to try to do it for everybody, which yes, is fair. And I also appreciate the fact that we got the slow look at Phlox, because he got the full on
Oh
body
yeah.
denobulan makeup, which is
Yeah.
so cool. Like, I know the spine, when T'Pol starts messing with it, that is also squicky, but the spine itself is very cool. And I
Yes,
like
it
that he's
is.
got, it's all down his arms and everything too. Like, it's cool to see aliens looking alien for more than just their cheeks or their foreheads, or even their hands and necks sometimes. Yeah, they're not just cheek of the week, or
Hmm.
nose of the week aliens. They really do it all. Like, think about Jadzia's spots going all the way down. When we see her like that,
Hmm.
it makes it feel more real. It's just those little things like that. So that is the good part about this. And Phlox is very calm through all of this.
Hmm.
And I can only imagine what the actors thought about playing
Oh,
this. And
oh,
I know. And I'm sure that John Billingsley has gone on about it, because his stories are hilarious, and I'm sure it is full of profanities and all
oh
that. And
yeah.
I just hope that they at least just laughed through it, as
Yes.
opposed to just felt awkward and embarrassed by it. And I
Yeah.
think they're both professional enough and have done that enough to be able to do that. But it doesn't even look like it was fun. And I love Phlox and T'Pol together. How many times have I picked
I
them,
know. I
right?
know.
But this, besides where they're talking about their 3 days of shore leave and like back and forth about the marsupials and all that,
Yeah.
like, that was the relationship I wanted to see,
Uh-huh.
not the rest of it.
Yeah, we could have had an amazing like two-hander that, Malcolm and Trip got that. Other characters get those solitary episodes when they're just stuck together. We could have got
Yep.
something incredible between these two here. Instead, these actors did their best. They acted their hearts out, but the content was not strong, at least
No.
for DePaul. So yeah. I think I had one more decon. Oh yeah, it's just T'Pol icky with Malcolm, which
Yeah,
is
but
hanging
Malcolm
on.
handles it well. Oh, I
He
know.
does, yes, but it's just like, oh, I don't know. I just, yeah, I couldn't do it. So that's the end of my decons.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay in that plot for just a couple minutes. First of all, a silly one because this is me and I notice these things when I watch so often back to back. Um, Phlox tells Paul the locking mechanism code is 42864, but that is absolutely not the number that she's trying to enter. And like,
I
even if the
noticed that.
keypad is set up vertically or whatever, I mean, there's multiple fours in there and she doesn't press the same button. So of course it's not going to open. You're not pressing the right buttons. And that one was just, I mean, it was such a focus of that moment that I
Yeah,
couldn't not see that. And
yeah.
that's just silly. And okay, here's my biggest disappointment, perhaps, in this whole thing, but even more than like the exploitativeness of it, is at the end. T'Pol wakes up and she asks Phlox if they had had an encounter, and he doesn't tell her yes or no. He just goes, "Oh, well, we don't discuss those things." Unfair, not cool, not Phlox. Like,
Yeah.
not okay. Like, not okay at all. And not what I feel like Phlox would have done. Like, I felt like he would have just
Oh,
said, Denobulan men aren't comfortable talking about such things, but we didn't cross any lines, or we didn't go past, a professional relation. He could have said it
yes,
in a
yeah.
thousand ways because she doesn't know if they did or not, because she doesn't remember, which is also weird. But
Now you're making me
yeah.
question, did they off screen? Are we supposed to be like, what happened? Now she's cured.
Oh, geez. She did disturb the serums. Oh, God. I had never thought about that before.
I hadn't until just now, and I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm just
No,
going to go with that. They
I
did not. But yeah, you're right. Why didn't he confirm whether they did or
I mean,
not?
that would have been my first thought waking up from something like that. And I would not have let it go. I hope at least she came back later and went, okay, I'm clear headed now. I've had some rest. I've taken a shower. I've eaten a meal. I really got to know. I mean, that feels like something you should know. So
If
that just
Yeah,
soured it even more for me.
it feels like taking advantage of her in some different kind of
Yes.
way, right?
Yeah.
Weird,
Yeah. And I know
weird
the writers
choice.
probably thought, yeah, that this was, gentler and it wrapped it up on kind of pat pat all is okay note, but it really just it was made me not like Phlox at that moment. And he had been so good
Hmm.
and kind and consistent and patient and everything through all this. It just didn't feel like it fit with the rest of it, and it really bothered me.
Yeah, well, I think looking at the patterns of his behavior and choices throughout the episode, I think we can safely assume that they did not do anything, regardless of his
I'm going
response.
to assume that.
Yeah, that's where I'm
Yeah.
landing.
All right. Good. I just, not that I would find anything wrong with them having a relationship, but this was I mean, it going back to blood fever. This is not the moment. Like, this
No,
is not how any of this should occur. So no. And I don't think Flax would do that, like I said. So
no, no.
let's hope he just didn't, and they had a discussion later on when she was a little bit more clear-headed.
Yeah, that's definitely not a micro track I'll be writing though.
No, that one can just stay in everybody's their own personal headcanon fanfic. So
Yeah, yeah.
all right, I've got one more. So multiple times Sklar tells Archer, you don't have to be conscious for the rest of this trip. The Klingons will pay me when you're alive or dead. Why is he conscious? Why is he even talking to him? Wouldn't it be easier just to keep him knocked out till he delivered him? I mean,
Hmm.
there's no harm coming to him, and I know the answer to this is plot, but I just and I know Sklar is not a hardened bounty hunter, but
Yeah.
it just seems to me like after, even if he hadn't thought about that, him waking up and being, chatting him up or pleading for his life or whatever, or the first time he did it and he got annoyed, why didn't he knock him out for the rest of the trip? I mean, it would have been a much different show and a much different episode, but it just bugs me. And I'm not a kidnapper, and I figured that out.
Well, I think he's lonely. Right?
That's true. I hadn't thought about it like that.
He doesn't have family, he doesn't have anyone, he doesn't have a ship or a crew. And yeah, on the outside he's annoyed, but he also is like, all right, someone to talk to. Because he seems like he probably was a decent guy, just a regular dude before all this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And just on a personal note, I think that Tezra sounds like some sort of medical drug. Like, do you have rheumatoid arthritis? Take Tezra and you'll feel much better in 4 to 6 weeks. Like, something about that name just has always struck me, is it doesn't sound like a ship name or a Tellarite name. It sounds like medicine. But that's just me.
See, I thought it was his daughter. Because I didn't remember. I didn't remember what the thing was about. So Tezra sounded like his daughter, like he's trying to get her back, or I don't know. So yeah. But yeah, I can hear it now in the commercials.
Yep. I mean, and it's the old people running through the fields or playing pickleball or whatever, and they're all smiling and happy. Like, yeah. All right. Well, I think we have made it. All right, but many, many people that I know that are 50 and older play pickleball. Like, I don't know if it's big by you, but here in the Midwest, it is like the 50+ game of choice. The tennis courts are being taken down for pickleball.
Down here too, my dad met his girlfriend playing pickleball at church. So, and he played pickleball for 2 hours every Friday. So yeah, he has multiple rackets and everything. So yeah, it is down here as well.
Mind if we take a look? Prettiest sight I ever saw.
So we have come to our newest segment tonight. We're going to celebrate the artistic direction in Enterprise and talk about some beautiful shots that we have here. It's time for the view screen on. So, Chris, why don't you start us off tonight? What shot do you want to call out?
My first instinct was to call out that very equal camera pan on both the gelled up Phlox and the gelled up DePaul, but I didn't want to celebrate anything from that scene. But I do appreciate Roxanne's choice there to be kind of very equal with both characters. So since I'm not picking that, I'm picking just the makeup of the Tellarites. This is the pinnacle Tellarite. To me, it beats what Discovery has done or Enterprise. I mean Picard. This is a Tellarite. It is such a realistic adaptation and extrapolation from TOS. The sunken in eyes, the nose, the wrinkles. Like, besides their hands are wrong, but now with Prodigy and everything, we've seen that there's a lot of variance in Tellarite biology. So cool, I can take that. But I just love this design with the hair. Everything's just perfect. It immediately makes you feel like you're seeing people that could have stepped into Journey to Babel.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to phrase it. You're right. And it feels so deeply Tellarite. Like, you don't have to know a lot about them to see this and know exactly what species you're looking at. And yeah, it's beautiful makeup. Nice call on that one.
Thank you. What did you pick?
All right, so this one, it really struck me the last time that I was watching it, and it's the very end of Archer's Big Escape, when he is going from the hallway into the escape pod, because, thank you, Roxanne Dawson, the camera is like it's on bottom, the base, the floor, whatever you want to call it, of the escape pod where Archer's feet are coming in. So as he opens this door, you see him coming in, but you also see the entire hallway behind him and the Klingons coming and all of that. And then when he closes that door, you see this Klingon escape pod, which is real bare bones, and it feels smaller. So
Mhm.
it's like a really interesting, just tiny little moment there because it's very fast. I mean, he's escaping,
Yeah.
but he comes in, you see that whole thing, and as he pulls it shut, you get that feeling of, oh, okay. And then he launches out. And it's a real small moment, but that feeling where it changes and you know he's in there and this is that last little bit to freedom. And I really liked that shot. I liked the way that it was set up. I liked the angle from inside the bottom of the pod. It was
Hmm.
just unusual. And again, I think this is because Roxanne Dawson was so in front of the camera for so long that she understands like the visual, and she was in front of the camera in Star Trek for so long. She understands how
Mhm.
you can do some of these, and she gets some really interesting angles. We said the same thing about LeVar Burton.
Yeah.
Like these are actors, directors, and you can see it in some of these choices, and it's cool.
I wonder what Klingon emergency nighties are like. Is it like
Oh,
chainmail?
oh my god. Well, it would definitely be flashy. I mean, these are disco Klingons, so I'm thinking there's definitely
Disco
some like
Klingon.
sequins and stuff involved, right?
Sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Wouldn't it be funny if it's that same bronze again, right? Like it's sparkly
Yes.
bronze. Like everybody's escape pod 90 is just some little bronze thing.
It's a universal constant.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my god. That might be the best part of Precious Cargo is the fact that it lent that joke out into the universe. Whew.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of actors, director, she got a great performance from Scott Bakula. He was just
Yeah.
really good the whole time. I really enjoyed
Hmm.
him.
Very genuine,
Yes.
and obviously we know that Archer is trying to manipulate this guy, but he's not manipulating him in ways that aren't genuine, and that's really nice.
Hmm.
All right, so on that good note, I think I hear a dog barking. So we have come to the time where that pooch barks and we discuss our favorite parts of the episode. It's Porthos pick time. So I didn't hear any dogs barking before this, so our picks weren't really mentioned yet, and we have a bit more to expand on and discuss in great moments abounding. So, what's your Porthos pick for this episode, Chris?
Well, we just started dipping into it, so we almost had it bark. This is just how Archer works on the Tellarite, which leads him to be a pilot. That Archer is such a really good listener, and he weaponizes his ability to listen because this guy is not a hardened criminal, like you said. He is kind of just open, and he's opening himself because he's just kind of desperate. And you can see that performance from this actor behind all that makeup as Archer's kind of working on him. He's like, look, I know you're probably a good guy, but you're just unlucky. Like, but you see all these emotions and regret, but a resolve trying to take hold on his face through the prosthetic. It's incredible. So both actors, like we were talking about how we could have got an amazing two-hander scene or story with DePaul and Phlox. We didn't get
Mm-hmm.
that, but we got that with these two guys. Like I could watch them for the whole or more of the episode just in that pod or in that little tiny ship together talking and bouncing off each other and Archer manipulating, but it's not devious. Like you get the sense that Archer's trying to come up to speed what's going on here. And he
Yeah.
actually does care, but he's also, you know, working him too. So my last thought of that is this develops into somewhat of a friendship, reminding me of like Trip in Dawn with his, I forget
Mm.
that guy's name, started with a Z maybe. Um,
I have
but
to go back.
yeah, it's been a while, right? But
Yeah.
I love that this friendship is similar. It grows over time and they become allies. And I love that final joke, right? That
Mm-hmm.
Archer's going to be doubled, the bounty on him will be doubled, so people will be coming after him. And Archer says, "Not you," something like that, and he says, "No promises." And I think that's a fun little way to leave the episode. And I loved that back and forth. So that development of that relationship and how Archer works him is my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, that's really well put. And you highlighted pretty much everything that I would say from that too. But yeah, it is really nice to see because again, we get to see Archer here, and he really is being genuine and open. But at the same time, he's trying to escape and
Mhm.
sabotaging the engine, and like because that's what you would do. And when he looks at him, he's like, "Do you really think that I want you to take me to the Klingons?" Like, there's 2 or 3 times where he's like, "Oh darn, we're not going to make the rendezvous." Like, he's it's very humanizing, I guess, but it really does add to that relationship. You see him being his Jonathan Archer self, but
Yeah.
at the same time having that other layer underneath. And that comes from all the experiences that he's had in these 2 seasons. And that is cool to see. Nice pick.
Thank you. So I'm really curious about your pick. Let's hear it.
All right, so mine, and it took a while to coalesce for me, but I really appreciate that in this episode we see 3 different people in command. We see Reed,
Oh,
we see Trip, and at the very end, we see Archer. And you know what? It's so easy and natural and like just you fall into it with this crew by this point
yes.
that it took me a while to realize 3 different people were in command, and all 3 of them did it their way, and they did it well, and it was
Uh-huh.
competent and nice to see. And like we don't get to see Reed in command that often, like I said that when I talked about him in this episode, but to see him in like the seamless handoff to Trip, and then
Hmm.
how he goes and falls right back into being tactical officer, and then when Archer comes on, the same thing happens. Trip just falls back and Archer takes over. Like, this is how a real ship and a real working family functions, and it was just really nice to see. And it was, like I said, so woven into this and not the focus that it was easy to miss. But that's not a common occurrence in an Enterprise episode. So I wanted to make sure to call that one out.
That's such a good point. And, compared to other series, we don't get that kind of people in and out of the big chair in one episode either.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another unique Enterprise feature. I love it. And I love Trip and Command. But
Oh yeah.
I do like Reed. He becomes the captain in Twilight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that detail. I don't love the facial hair, but I love the detail. But
Yeah, but Hoshi has good hair in that episode,
she
so
does. She does.
not the most important part, but
No, no. Okay.
Accessing library computer data.
Here on First Flight, you know that we love trivia and behind the scenes tidbits. So we pick a few to share about each episode. So why don't I start tonight? And my pick is the space station visited by the bounty hunter, Scalar, and Archer. It was a reuse of the Cardassian repair facility CGI model from Deep Space Nine. And I knew that looked familiar and it was so cool
Mhm.
looking. So, yeah, I love that kind of reuse. And then the interior of Scalar's shuttle was a redress of the Class 2 shuttle set from Star Trek Voyager. So we know we
Yep.
love those Voyager connections here. And yeah, the shapes did look familiar now that I think about it. I couldn't quite place it, but yep. And then the shackles that Archer is put in on the Klingon ship is a modified reuse of the wrist restraints used in Canamar. So again, 2 little Canamar callbacks in this episode. Probably unintentional, but I like that we're
Oh, I
picking
don't
these things
know
up.
because think about those wrist restraints. Okay, so in Canamar, Trip uses one of them to knock out the big guy, right? The guard, just
Mm-hmm.
like Archer modifies his to try to knock out the Klingon. So I think that's a direct callback right there, especially since it's the same prop.
Ah,
But that's just me. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I thought it right away. I'm like, hey, it's that thing that Trip hit the guy with, which is the vaguest thing to think ever. But I knew what I meant.
yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
yeah, that one from Canabar that looks kind of like a pop top, a
Yeah,
really heavy pop top.
yeah, I love it. I got one more, and it's a short one, but you saw Robert O'Reilly's name flash up on screen,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Ooh, when's he going to show up?" And it's a small little role, but he like just like his performance for Gowron, he's dripping with attitude.
Oh
His
yeah.
line
That
readings are so
voice.
delicious.
Hmm.
Loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, he's a good guest star to get on for sure. And another one who could do incredible things through makeup.
Yes. All right. So, what kind of trivia do you have for us tonight?
Well, speaking of makeup, this is the first appearance of that revised Tellarite makeup that Michael Westmore did. And this was the first appearance of Tellarites in general since the voyage home. I mean, discounting stock footage that would be thrown around here and there for background and stuff. But I just thought that was neat that it's maybe because we watch so much Trek now whenever we want to, it didn't feel like as much of a gap. But that's a long time
Yeah, it
before
is.
between seeing Tellarites. So that was kind of cool. And my other ones, I've got two more short ones. Like I said, last on-screen usage of the decon gel. Thank goodness. We can just name check it from now on. We don't need the glitter. And one that I had to call out because we know I like Vulcan aesthetic is the Dekir type Vulcan ship that is seen docked at the space station
Yeah.
has its warp ring in a horizontal position. And that's the first and only time we see the ship of this type in that configuration. That was almost my view screen on.
Me too.
But it's so fast. But
It's
it's really
so
cool.
cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool. I love that ship.
I love the idea that it could move like that.
Yeah, that's very Star Wars like.
Mhm.
Like the Star Wars ships often moving and reconfiguring based off of whether they're in an atmosphere or landing or whatever. We don't get that a lot in Star Trek, but I love those Vulcan ships. And I really wish Eagle Moss made an XL version of that ship. Otherwise,
Ooh.
I would get it.
You have no more space for ships.
I'll buy more shelves.
That's the best answer.
At Thanksgiving, my family came in my office and they counted the ships. And they're like, Chris, there's going to be an intervention soon. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then my brother's like, so how many like are available to buy? I'm like, oh no, like 200. He's like, oh, so 60 out of 200. That's a decent ratio. I'm like, thank you. My wife's just
See,
like,
it's
no, no.
all perspective. It's all
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
Okay, so one time Boimler dragged me to the Starship History Museum.
Dragged? You ran up to the
No,
doors.
I didn't. It was boring. I hated it. Anyway, so they had the NX-01 there, Archer's Enterprise.
Yeah, classic design. Plus it had, the grapplers.
Skip that part. They don't care.
I love grapplers.
See?
All right. So after that little bit of joy, it has come for our final thoughts and grappler ratings. The Vulcans Verdict time. So, Chris, on a scale of 1 to 10 grapplers, and in an episode that prominently features the grapplers, how do you rate the episode?
Well, we only saw grapplers get used once in this episode, so my score is going to be one. No, my score is definitely not one. There's good stuff in this. We talked about them, but the decons definitely do overshadow. I'm struggling with this score though, but I think I'm just going to go with 5.5. Half this episode is something I never want to see. In fact, like, as you know, we were texting, work was so busy that I couldn't watch this until tonight, right before recording. Well, usually in that situation, like the kids would be on my lap, and this is what we would do before I tuck them in. I'm not watching this episode with my kids. Even when they went to bed, I'm like, all right, I got to watch this episode. But you can watch it on the TV. You can do whatever you want on the TV. I'm going to watch this on my phone because it doesn't need to be seen by anyone. I'll be like shamed. Like it's just, yeah. So it's just those scenes I don't want to watch. I don't want other people to see, oh, there's Star Trek. Like putting that in the category of their brains, especially a non-fan like my wife. So 5.5, the Archer stuff. Good, solid, middle of the road storytelling from Star Trek. The rest, ugh.
All right. Well, you know what? We're on a very similar wavelength here because I was going back and forth between a 5.5 and a 6, and I was like, you know what? I can't give it the 6 because there are other things I gave 6s that I would
Mhm.
watch 100 times before I'd watch this one again.
Yeah.
And the Archer plot is fine, but we've seen him do this before this season in other episodes that were better than this. And Malcolm is awesome, but he doesn't have enough screen time to save this one. And
Yeah.
to Paul and Phlox, like I said, it's the wrong story. I want to see them
Yeah.
doing science. I don't want to see them being squiggy. And it's just this one. And I think if people listened all the way to the end of our last episode, when we announced this one, I was like, yeah. And I just feel like it suffers from being, it's not awful. It's just, yeah, which is different. It's not offensive. It ages poorly, but it's not like, it's not Code of Honor. Like, it's
Oh, yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's not even, it's just not that great. And it suffers from being packed between episodes that are really great. And
Mhm.
the end of this season has such a high. And like we were saying, if this had been moved back to more of the middle of the season when you kind of hit that little lull, maybe it wouldn't feel as jarring.
Mm.
But because it's between things that are really so much better, in my opinion, this one just really feels that much worse. So it's also a 5.5 from me.
That's interesting because you know what else we scored 5.5? Both of us?
What?
Canamar.
Oh my God. That's funny. Maybe we just don't like Archer escaping from kidnappers. Maybe
No.
that's what it is. We have a secret bias.
That
Don't you
must
kidnap
be.
Archer. I can't watch it.
But we always say the way he works himself out of the situation by piloting and playing on the abductor, that's what we like. So
Exactly.
it's just the other stuff with it. Maybe we
It's
just
too
like
funny.
Scott Bakula.
Perhaps. I mean, he does seem like someone you'd want to hang out with, right?
Yeah.
I love it when the actors are like that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, after that, and before we finish up, let's go through a quick recap of the pros, the things we did really like for this one. So run us through your picks, Chris.
All right. My first pro was that this is just a follow-up to Judgment. Love that continuity. Number 2, the strings and percussion during T'Pol's escape. Were very minimalist and striking. Number 3, the fight on the Klingon ship and the fight between the Enterprise and the Klingon ship. Cool stuff. And then my view screen on is simply the Tellarite makeup. And the Porthos pick is just the development of the Archer Scalar relationship as Archer works on him, pilots, and they end up kind of with this friendly relationship with that fun little jokey button at the end. All right.
Nice list.
Let's hear your list.
All right. So my first one is Malcolm Reed is good at his job. And we see that in a bunch of ways in this episode. My number 2 was the scene between the Tellarite brothers and how real and honest and emotional that it felt, even through all that fantastic makeup that you called up.
Mm-hmm.
My number 3 is the escape and Archer's fabulous dive roll and the disco Klingons and all that.
Disco Klingons.
Oh yeah, that's going on the list for Noel of all the things that we call out as the costume shorthand in this season. Disco Klingons is now on that list, along with the Vulcan robes of judgment and belly bro. Oh. All right, back to my list. Viewscreen On was the shot from inside the escape pod, and as it closes, how you feel it getting smaller. And my Porthos pick is the fact that we see 3 different people in command of Enterprise in this episode, which is unusual and very fun.
You haven't appreciated Saturday Night Fever unless you saw it in the original Klingon.
Oh my God, I'm just imagining Klingons in leisure suits. What? And why am I picturing Gowron's head? Because Robert O'Reilly's in this one. Gowron in like the white disco suit
with the eyes.
With the eyes and the finger up, but he's holding a bat'leth. Oh my God!
Watch me dance with honor. No, the
I can
reason
hustle with the best of them.
yes, when you said disco Klingons this time, it made me think of, have you seen that John Travolta commercial where he's Disco Santa Claus?
No. Oh my god.
It weirds me out. I don't know why, but yeah, it's Capital One at the end, because you're like, what is this commercial about? And he says, "What's in your wallet?" as he's doing disco on the floor as dressed as Santa.
I'm gonna have to look that up later.
Yeah.
My chronometer's running backwards, sir.
Incoming transmission.
You read my letter?
We want to remind you that we adore getting feedback and thoughts from listeners, as we hope you could tell from our last mailbag episode. And, Peter and Not That Kevin Hart's comments. So, we had so much fun sharing and discussing your insights and ideas. We've had lots of chats on social media with you, and we're collecting again for the next mailbag episode. And that's coming up soon. So this is your call for any Grappler ratings, Porthos picks, Viewscreen On picks, or general comments. Just get them to us using that hashtag CarrotCrew.
Yes, please do reach out to us and share any thoughts, smiles, anything with that wonderful hashtag CarrotCrew. It pops up all sorts of places lately, and I really like it. You can reach us at First Flight Pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. We're also on YouTube under the Tricorder Transmissions Network. And if you want to give us an audio file with any of your thoughts, we will be happy to put those in our next mailbag. And you can email us audio files of 90 seconds or less at firstflightpod@gmail.com. You can reach me personally. Best place right now is still Twitter, trying for Blue Sky, and that's at Abby M. Summer, SOMMER. Chris, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter, and that would be at Shelf Nerds. You can also find me on YouTube at my channel, Completing the Shelf.
Thank you so much for joining us for this one. It is always a great time talking Trek with you, Chris, and with you, our Carrot Crew. Thank you for spending this time with us, and we will be back next time with the season finale episode, The Expanse, the 26th episode of season 2. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this one, and we even have one view screen on that was submitted early because that is so good.
Yeah.
I can't wait. So as always, to finish up this penultimate episode, we leave you with this quote from Captain Jonathan Archer and your moment of Melanie.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us, woven into the threads that bind us, all of us, to each other.
All right. That one's done.
I think that's the shortest one we might have ever done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we were done with the pros in 15 minutes or something like that.
I know.
I did like this one more than I thought. So, hey, it's another episode of Star Trek that I didn't really remember too much about. So there's not new Star Trek on right now. So there's a little experience of new Star Trek.
True. Well, Alex is betting that the disco drought ends this weekend and we get some news. There's some big convention or something. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping too. And I'm hoping that it's not like, guess what? Premiering January 1st. Because then I'm going to be like, I didn't start my rewatch yet. I don't think I can cram 4 seasons into a month. But
yeah,
we'll see.
I doubt
I don't
it'll be
think
the
they
first.
do
It'll be
that.
like the 26th. Something like that,
Yeah.
you know.
It could be the middle of February like Picard did.
It could be.
I wonder if they don't wait till football's done.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I mean, I don't know how much crossover there is, but Paramount does do all that football stuff.
Yeah.
Like Paramount Plus does extra football coverage, and I see the commercials for it all the time when I watch Star Trek. I'm like, do you really think that I want to see this? Because I don't think I ever intentionally watch football games. Like, they just take too long.
That is
They're
true.
really, really long. And they spend so much time lining up. I do that all day.
We have football Saturday all day, but we only watch college football. We don't do the NFL ones because like there's a lot more heart and tradition, and I don't know, to the college football world that we get into that more than the NFL. But anyway.
Well, it was funny. I realized that it's not just a random collection of Geordie, it's a random collection of like LeVar Burton, because he's probably like he's one of my top 3 personal heroes of all time. And I've gotten to meet him twice. And like I have a book he wrote, a kid's book about imagination from that A Kid's Book About company that does all those like positive transformative verbs. It's awesome. And I accidentally was one of the first 50 people to order it, and I got a signed copy because of that. I didn't realize when I pre-ordered it that I was one of these, like, it completely surprised me, and it came and I'm like dancing around and I'm like, and I actually legit wear him on my body multiple times because I love the new one, the MoveOn.org shirt that says LeVar Burton says read banned books. I'm a big fan of that one.
I've never gone as deep with this LeVar Burton love as you have, and I feel like I am missing out.
Oh, well, someday I'll tell you the story of my upbringing, which was very much the only TV I watched for a very long time was PBS. And
me too.
Being very pale and freckly, redheaded kid, I ended up having to be inside for a certain chunk of the day when it was really hot in the summer. And it was always like 1 to 2. My mom was like, the sun is too strong. You have to come in. You have to stay inside. We watched back to back Reading Rainbow and whatever else was on PBS. It had a popsicle every single day for,
I don't
know, a decade of my youth. I can quote you so many Reading Rainbows. I did a project in college. This is back when we had videotapes, VHS tapes, where I cataloged and databased all the Reading Rainbow episodes that had come out thus far that I had taped off of PBS over the course of, 6 months or whatever, to have them as resources. Like, I used them in my classroom the first 5 years I taught until the tapes like literally fell apart. It was amazing. So, and every time I've met him, he's been glorious. Every time I hear him speak, I just want to like be around him. The new podcast he's doing for kids, the Sound Detectives one, my girls are eating it up. Like, it drops every Wednesday.
Oh, it's out
they
already?
Can't wait. Yeah, it's out. The first 5, I think, maybe 6.
Okay.
The one just dropped today. I'll send you a picture. Lila literally drew the main characters. One of them is a 3'5" ear, like literally an ear. And the other's a detective, and they got this delivery of a mystery sound with a drone, and she drew this amazing picture of it. But I mean, just listening to him, and it's so funny because we got to the grocery store today after school. I picked him up, we started listening, and he leaves them voice messages, and it will go beep, a message from LeVar Burton, and they're both like saying it with me. I'm like, my girls love my hero too.
How can you not like him?
The man is a living legend. Like, that's one when, I know he's the youngest of the TNG cast, but I mean, he's still an older gentleman, and when he goes, I am going to be devastated for so many reasons.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to when the TNG cast starts.
Oh my god.
That's really like Nimoy. I was sad, of course.
Right.
And the world lost something very special, but it wasn't the same as when Renee.
Yes.
And that came out of nowhere for me. I was sitting at dinner scrolling, and then I see it. And I couldn't eat anymore. And I had no idea I had such a emotional connection to Odo, and then also the Renee too. Just so I can't imagine what TNG, like, that's foundational, formative people.
Yeah, I know. Well, or the Voyager crew, like,
oh my gosh,
we're lucky. Yeah. We're lucky we haven't lost any of them. And like, I was thinking about when I found out about Aaron Eisenberg, and
Yeah.
he had liked a tweet of mine, I think 5 or 6
Oh.
days before he passed.
Oh.
And I saw it come up and I was like, wait, what? No. And like, I honestly felt like the tunnel vision. I was like,
Yeah.
but he just interacted with me. Like
Yeah.
because he was, he was so about that and so
Connection.
back and forth. And yes. And it wasn't even a week. And I mean, and everybody knew like he had health issues ongoing for such a long time that, I mean, it's one of those things that it's never expected, but it's never unexpected. Like when you get up into your 90s, like Shatner's going to go one of these days and it's going to be expected and not expected because unless he suddenly is ill with something. But I mean, he's at that age. Like it's just, sometimes you just don't wake up.
I feel like he's going to outlive Patrick Stewart. Because Patrick Stewart seems
frailer.
Frailer. Although, like, my sister watched Picard season 3. She didn't watch any other Picard. She doesn't watch Star Trek anymore, but she watched it TNG growing up, and she was intrigued. And I think I said this before on the pod, but
yeah, I remember you saying that.
She was really drawn to Frakes. She was like, that guy is charismatic. But she had such a critical view of Patrick Stewart. Just kind of like, oh, that poor old guy. Every scene he's sitting down, like derogatory almost in some ways. Like I get what she's saying. And he was kind of frail until he was on that Enterprise D bridge. I feel like he came alive.
Well, and I think that makes sense.
Yeah. But promoting his memoir.
Yeah.
He is very energetic. And like I saw him on Conan's podcast and man, he was like full of life. And I loved, like I felt really good listening to him talking with such verve. So, yeah.
I think what it is between him and Shatner is that like Shatner has looked the same and kind of been the same for, I don't know, 20 years-ish now. I mean, yes, he's gotten slightly older, but like he pretty much still kind of looks like he did. Yeah. Patrick Stewart looks older. I mean,
and he sounds older. His voice, his main instrument is garbled a little bit.
Yes.
I still love him, but
yes. I mean, when I get another Audible credit, I'm going to get his autobiography that he's reading himself because I actually have the book, but I would like to have that as well.
Well, after Nimoy passed, I did listen to I Am Spock.
Oh.
And that was really special, right?
Yeah.
And so definitely look forward to the 18-hour read on Audible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so death. Lots of death talk tonight.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just avoiding talking about this episode.
I think it's it's a thing. There's a lot of things to say.
It wouldn't have been so bad if it wouldn't have come in such a good chunk of season 2. If this had been back at some point around like Precious Cargo or whatever, when you're getting to all those. Okay, maybe not like right next
Night
to
and
it.
Sick Bay, Precious Cargo, and Bounty all together.
God.
Boom, 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 boom.
We might have some tension after that, but not of the sexual variety.
Oh gosh.
Oh, but I feel like it's surrounded by so many episodes that are so good that the fact that this is not horrible. It's just definitely not as good as the rest of the stuff we've been doing the past couple months. So.
It's not as bad as I thought it was going in. And full disclosure, I was routinely confusing this one with Bound.
Oh,
so I was like, when are the Orions showing up?
That's funny. Well, there's only 2 letters difference, so
I know, and in my brain, like the exploitative aspect is in both, right? And so, like, I guess that's what my brain did. Bound, Bounty, and didn't they mention Orion's? Or oh no, I was watching Despite Yourself. Discovery season 1, and I think Orions were mentioned there, Orion slave girls or something. Anyway, So my brain was primed to just deal with that nonsense, and instead I got some different nonsense. So
Lots of sweat.
and gel and flippy spines.
Yeah.
I don't
The
know how
spine
to
is
describe
cool,
that.
though.
It is cool until T'Pol's like playing with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you. Anyway, we should probably just do this.
Yeah, let's just do this.
Because our listeners are listening to us talk about this after they've listened to us talk about the whole episode.
That's fair. Fair.
And by the way, I forgot I was writing the haiku, so I just wrote it. So
Okay.
it's not the best, but here it is.
Well, I think it's fine for this one. Like, this does not need high art.
No. There's plenty of imagery in the episode. We don't need any more imagery in the haiku.
Nope. All right.